My name is Margo Blake. I was born on October 11th, 1957 in Queens, New York. That's about it. And then my great-grandmother, we found out, actually had like a Sally Hemings relationship with her plantation owner. My father he's not an artist. He was an athlete. And my mother was the dancer, but she was never a professional dancer. But she taught me how to do the time step. She used to dance at the ballroom. She used to do the Lindy Hop. She used to do all of that. So I get all of that from her, from my mommy. I wanted to go to Performing Arts High School, but my mother wouldn't let me. So I went to Benjamin Cardozo High School, and I danced there and wound up teaching and leading the dance program there and doing some choreography and performing there and yada, yada, yada. I did my first piece of choreography to Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, they were at the time. And I was walking by one day and there was a chair sitting on the stage and it was one red spotlight. And I think they had just left the light on. And I looked through the door. And for some reason, that inspired me to choreograph that dance to that song, Can I Speak to You Before You Go to Hollywood? And we did it, and we tore the school down with that piece. Absolutely tore it up. And everybody would cry, and everybody would love that piece. That was my first choreography. I don't know. I danced with Bernice Johnson in Queens from the time I was 7. I started dancing, taking lessons at 7. We had to start with ballet, and I hated ballet. But whatever the show was, the only thing I remember from that show was the African pieces. I was 6 years old, and Chief Bey came on stage. I don't know if you know Chief Bey. Chief Bey came on stage with the drummers, with the core drummers, and something inside of me just rose up. And I don't remember anything else from that show but those African pieces. And I wanted to do African from that moment on for the rest of my life. And Chuck Davis was my very first, before he was the famous Chuck Davis, was my first African dance teacher at 7 and 8 years old in New York, in Queens, at Bernice Johnson. But Bernice Johnson was a pioneer black woman for the time because nobody that was black ever went to Carnegie Hall. And here we were, a whole slew of little black kids in Carnegie Hall at rehearsal, running around when black people were barely even allowed in Carnegie Hall. And that's how big the school had gotten. She had like so many hundreds of kids. But we were the pro class, and we were the best and the baddest. So I went from the baby pro to the junior pro, and the junior pro class, they still talk about us. They still talk about us today. At one time during the 70s, every Broadway show, almost every movie that you saw, Hello Dolly, Funny Girl, everything, had a Bernice Johnson dancer. Dance Theater of Harlem, Alvin Ailey, all of the major dance companies, they were Bernice Johnson dancers from our school. And that was just before we were old enough to make it professionally. The Wiz, all of that was Bernice Johnson. And the most famous one that came from us, I think that most people would probably know, is Michael Peters, the late Michael Peters, who I idolized as a choreographer. That's why they produced the dancers that they produced from us, because they were hard on us. They were rough. They were wicked, you know the way. But we danced like nobody else. BJ, we had a reputation all over the country for producing the best dancers at Bernice Johnson. And she used to be a Cotton Club dancer. Her mother was a Cotton Club dancer, and she was a Cotton Club dancer. After I left BJ's, after the company, I went to Temple University. I was in their dance program there and danced there for 3 years because I only had 3 years left to do. And while I was there, I started the Third World Dance Company. They used to have an organization of the black dorm students called the Third World Organization. And I came along and I started the Third World Organization Dance Company. And I got the dorm students together and I said, come on, let's dance, you know. And we used to rehearse in the basement I used to have football players from Temple University football team, as well as the dorm students who were in my dance company. And while I was in Temple, one of my jazz teacher was Pat Scott Hobbs. She brought me over to Freedom Theater, where I met William Whitfield, and it was there that I met Vanjie Brown. And Vanjie, of course, was one of the original members with the Shalele sisters, one of the original members with Karen and Carol of Arthur Hall's African-American Dance Ensemble, which I had never heard of. When I met Vanjie was like, why don't you come on over, to Ile Ife? But so she is the one that brought me over to Arthur Hall's. William and I were partners. We were buddies. And so we had to go in one night, and the way we got in the company was we had to audition. But the audition was a class with the company. So Arthur gave a class one night, our first night there, and William and I just aced the class. We didn't know we aced it, but we aced the class. And then we were all nervous and everything. Oh, did we make it? We were asking Vanjie, did we make it? And she was like, she talked to Arthur and everything, and she came down. She told us, yeah, you made it in the company. And we were like, ah! Just being under him and watching his genius, as an artist and choreographer and everything. He is the one that I learned so much from after Michael Peters passed. He then became my, I guess he didn't know it, but, my mentor. And it's interesting because you don't know how much you're learning when you're under somebody like that. You don't realize what's really being implanted and imparted to you until you have to get out on your own and you find that you have to use it. With Arthur's company, I danced for 6 years, traveled to Arizona and California. I did Orpheus. Yeah, I was Eurydice. William was Death. We did the famous death scene where he kills Eurydice, and Arthur loved that choreography, and it was hard. Arthur always wore me and William out. He did the tribute to Marvin Gaye at the Painted Bride, danced in that. And we did, the height of it was the funeral from Fat Tuesday, and I was the widow. And there's actually a video of that production on PBS. You can buy it. But they cut us completely out. And even though Chuck Davis is still my first African dance teacher, and then with Arthur, but I heard that Chuck had a lot to do with the editing, and of course his company is all splattered all throughout that production, and you don't see us at all. You see Arthur walking through maybe once or twice, but you never see us dancing, and we were a major part of that whole production. That production ran for several, maybe even a week long. Gosh, we did so much. I can't remember everything that I did with them, but that's where I learned about a lot of the African culture, the religious culture, and I just learned about the deeperness of the African culture at Ile Ife. Learning about the dances and the history behind the dances. And of course, Arthur would watch the rehearsals, and if he needed to restage it, and he would yell at us and curse at us and tell us, But, and then when we did Cakewalk and all of that, he re-choreographed it and choreographed a part for me and William, our solo. And then he would teach classes when James didn't teach, and we would take class with him. And I miss those classes terribly. We used to have warm-ups, Dunham warm-ups, for 2 hours before we had a 3-hour rehearsal, And they were like, I'm like, yeah, we would be at the bar and down the floor for 2 hours before we even had rehearsal. Are you kidding me? But those are the things that you love and you miss because you just danced and danced and danced and danced, And I miss that. I miss that, man. It was great. So that's when I left. And then, after that, I started making my way in Florida and planting seeds down there and doing what I learned with Arthur. And, there was no real artists in the schools program down there. And of course, with Arthur, I had my first opportunity to do artist in the schools through the Young Audience Program. The whole way that he had put together the presentation, when I went to Florida, I went knocking on Orange County School Board and I said, listen, you need to have culture in the schools. You need to do this. You need to do that. They didn't have it. I would not know how to put a show together to go into schools had it not been for Arthur. And I just watched the way he integrated, lecture along with song and dance and drumming, how different performers take on different roles within the production, so it's not just one person doing the whole thing. How to engage an auditorium of 500 kids, and get them up to be audience participation. Being able to do, my thing is Che Kool, it's old as dirt, but it still works even today, getting them up and getting them dancing and getting them moving. The students love it, the teachers love it, the call and response. And I think that African dance works really, really well in the schools because of those different elements. I think when I was with Arthur, we did a cloth demonstration. I don't remember the production. I know we did storytelling because Van used to do a thing on Kwaku and Nancy. So they put together a program and they called it the Fresh Starts program. And I was the African drum and dance, and I worked with one drummer. And I took the program and I put it together like the Young Audience program, like what we did. Like what I did with Arthur Hall. So I learned how to do that and engage the audience and do all of that from being with Arthur Hall's company. That went for 21 years. And we would bring them out dressed up in African garb as a king and a chief and a queen mother and everybody in real garments and accoutrements that I actually bought and brought back from Ghana. And they would come on as the chief and the queen mother and the princess and we took some poetic license, but, so all of that, being able to put all of that together. I mean, I learned that all from Arthur, from being with Arthur. So I couldn't have done that. That's a direct descendant, from his programs and his teaching and my experience with him. So. And through the years, I've gone to Ghana. I visited Ghana twice and studied over there. I was over there the first time for 3 months, and I studied with a group over there. What else? Then I opened up a dancing school in Orlando, and I had that for 6 years. We used to dance in churches. We danced all over the place, and we were doing African dance in churches, African praise dance and all of that. And I closed the dancing school to go back to school to get a master's in arts administration. Oh, during those years, I became a minister, an ordained minister, helped to found a Bible college, was assistant pastor at a church, did performing arts at the Bible college. I was the director of performing arts, and there's a big difference in the cultural religions in Africa and the Christian religion in Africa. And I learned a lot. When I first started at Bernice Johnson, I was a little girl. And I remember when we would do some African shows and African dances, I didn't know what it was, but people would get possessed, some of the dancers. And they used to move us out the way. They used to move the kids out the way. And I used to see it, but we didn't really understand it. We didn't really know what was going on. Okay, I did not come in contact with that until I came to Ile Ife. My thing was, y'all do what you want to do with that. I ain't touching that. I don't know enough about it. I never felt good about it. Okay, I'm a Christian, and I wasn't saved at the time. I really wasn't in church at the time. I was kind of out there searching at the time. But my foundation with the Catholic Church at the time kept me from getting involved in that. I never felt good about it. Okay, I could never deal with that. And it used to make me aggravated because I was only there to dance. And it would interrupt our dance class, our dance classes. And some of the other dancers used to feel like that, whether they say it or not. So that was my first introduction. And that was the closest that I had ever come to it. And I understand now why God allowed me to go through those things. I didn't understand it then, didn't know what was going on. Didn't think it would ever touch me. Okay, I'm like, okay, I'm just dancing, I went to Africa. When I went to Africa, they were teaching me some of the dances, the war dances, Otzi Agbiko. And bought a lot of stuff over there, bring it back, I found myself really getting, I had turned my whole house basically into a shrine. I had African curtains, I had Adinkra curtains, I had this, I had that. I started wearing nothing but African clothes, had drums in my house, all that kind of stuff, right? Minister come over my house, they couldn't even stay in my house because of the demonic presences and what they would feel in the house. I didn't feel it. I didn't know. I used to get attacked in my sleep every night. Okay, something would jump on me and try to kill me and try to choke me at night. Things would jump on me and like gouge my legs out. I would wake up with Charlie horses. And, I know the difference of waking up with a Charlie horse and when you're attacked. Well, make a long story short, it was a Ghanaian minister in Florida who was a part of our church. He had just come to the church. He was a Christian evangelist. This minister said to me, "You Black Americans," he said, "you come over to Africa and you study the dance. You study all of those voodoo dances." He said, "You bring them back to America." He said, "We, the Christians in Africa, are trying to stop that stuff because it has devastated our continent. Or what our ancestors did," he said, "has devastated our continent and brought much misery to us." He said, "But you come over here, you don't know what you're doing. You Black Americans, you learn this stuff and you keep it going and you keep it going over here and you keep it going over here." I felt this big when he said that to me. He said, "And you don't understand the powers of what you're dealing with." And I know that it was because of my direct involvement at Ile Ife. Even though I didn't do it, I was around it. And I opened my spirit to that stuff through the dances. I sang the songs. I placated to those spirits through the dance. I don't put anybody down. I don't anything like that. I understand syncretism. I studied candomblé. I studied Santeria. I studied all of that. But like that minister said to me, and when I went to Africa the second time, I know that God sent me over. God allowed me to go over there the first time in order to learn more about the traditional religions. He sent me the second time after my deliverance to learn about the Christian religion and to be able to be empowered to fight those spirits. I still do African dance, but there are certain things I will never do again. Certain songs I will never sing again. I love the artistic quality of the dancers. Arthur was a genius. But me personally, I think that it all got messed up when he really started delving into those religions. I retaught some of the dances that we used to do when I got to Florida in different venues. But I don't know that I really, other than to watch him and to admire his ability to create, I've often said that I'm not that creative. But choreographically, I don't know that I really pulled anything from Arthur because choreography is just so personal. It's what's inside of the choreographer. I mean, other than to admire his choreography and to admire his creativity, it was more so really the educational and the artists in the schools that I learned. And then just keeping the African dance alive. And I have been teaching at the Center for Contemporary Dance. I've been teaching African dance there, West African dance. I have a wonderful group of drummers in Florida that God blessed me with. And I'm sure that some of Arthur's influences will come out as I do that for the Lord now. So yeah. I don't think it should die. I don't think it should just go away because he had too much of an influence on the dance world and on people's lives, so many people's lives in so many different places. So the end.